So there's like a way of speaking and dealing with people that I have seen a lot of church leaders do, whether I experienced it personally or I've heard the testimonies from others. And I just felt led to come on and talk about it a little bit. Which is, there's been like this phrasing in this in words being used sometimes, such as like, I'm going to be the one to release you into the world. I'm going to be the one to release you to do this ministry work. But it's like this specific word, right? The word release being used. And God was showing me that the problem with using language like that, and where the leaders are making a mistake, is that it implies ownership. It shows that in that person's mind and heart, they think that this person or these people belong to them, and that they are the ones that get to dictate when this person is allowed to do this or that. And I don't understand why leaders in the church think that God's people belong to them. God's people don't belong to you. God is the one that decides when a person gets to go and do whatever. God is the one that decides what that person's service is unto the Lord. And you know, what I was thinking about was, or God had brought me to Acts chapter 9, right? Where that's when Saul had that encounter with God, and you know, he was blind for those 3 days or whatever, and God sent that man Ananias and told him like, hey, go to this place, go meet this guy Saul, and I want you to you know, pray for him, because I'm about to, you know, use him like for my glory, pretty much is what he's saying. Not in those words, but that's basically what God is saying. Go pray for him because I have a plan to use this guy. And Ananias was like not going to at first, because he was scared, you know, obviously because of Saul's history, killing all the Christians and everything. And he was like, God, are you sure? Like, this man has been persecuting us. Like, he was hesitant, you know, to just go and be praying for this man, you know. But then that's when God had responded and said, yeah, like, I'm gonna use him, you know, as an instrument for me. And so anyway, the thing is that you see that Ananias, even though he had whatever perception in his mind about Saul, whatever, he still obeyed God and going and laying his hands and praying for this man and delivering this message. I think the issue is that the leaders like think that, like, I've experienced it personally and I've seen it with others as well. It's like when somebody comes to serve in a ministry, it's like they put this person in this box. It's like sometimes like they develop this plan or this vision for this person's life in their mind, where they think this person is gonna serve me like this in my ministry, and they have this whole planned. They have this whole vision and plan laid out for this person's life. And then what it ends up leading to is when that person doesn't fit into that mold or fit into that box of what they thought that person should be doing, then they feel so hurt and so betrayed and all of this stuff, when it's like, no, there was no betrayal going on. It's just that you had a plan in your mind of what you expected to happen, and what you think that this person owed to you because of the fact that you ministered to them, you know, that now you have worked it in your mind that you were betrayed and all this person was just not loyal to you and all of this stuff. And it's like, no, the problem started in your heart, because you developed a mindset and a heart posture that God's people belong to you, and that you were going to be the one to dictate what they did and when they did it, when it's really about being surrendered to God and wanting to know what God's heart is for a person. And the thing about it too is that leadership is about servanthood, right? That's what God said over and over again in the word, in the gospels, is he made a consistent point about, if you want to be a leader in his kingdom, it means you're going to have to serve. You want to be the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? Okay, you're going to have to take the lowest position. It's about serving others. You have to love God, and you have to love God's people and be wanting to serve God and serve his people. Okay? It's not to just put you in a place of power just so that you can be like, I'm the boss and, I get to do whatever. It doesn't mean that leaders don't carry authority. I'm not talking against that. Leaders do have an authority that they have to stand in, right? And that there's a reason that God positions leaders, So we're not talking against leadership. We're not speaking about, being dishonoring or disrespectful to leaders or something like that. But I'm speaking to a heart issue that I see with leadership that causes a lot of problems. And it's because of this wrong heart postures, wrong motives, where leaders view people that they pour into as people that they expect to get this return on an investment. Because I poured into you, because I prayed for you, and I taught you this, and I did this for you, they develop this expectation that means that this person must come in and let me get, like I said, the return on my investment. Let me get my, get something back for all that I did for you by having you serve me in this way, because again, that in combination with this whole plan that they worked out in their mind about how they think this person is supposed to serve God and what God has for this person, but again, it's the problem of thinking that you are the one that owns. You are, somebody that God has positioned to lead God's people and to shepherd over people, but you're not the boss. God is still the boss. So that's why you see even in Acts 13, right? Then later on, right, when the Apostle Paul, they were praying, that group of believers, the prophets and the teachers, it says they were gathered together, and in that group was Saul and Barnabas, or Paul and Barnabas, and and it says the Holy Spirit was the one who said, set apart for me Paul and Barnabas to the work to which I call them. Now, there were leaders, right? They were prophets and teachers. But do you see them in the word standing up and be like, well, I don't think that Paul's ready. I don't think that Barnabas is ready for that. I feel like, they still need to grow. They still have this character issue. No, they don't. You don't get to decide whether a person is qualified or not, or whether or not they should be allowed to do something. When God speaks and says, set apart for me this person, put this person in this position, or let this person serve in this capacity, you're supposed to just obey that. And that's what they did in Acts 13. They weren't sitting there arguing with God, talking about, well, I think that they're supposed to stay here and serve like this. No, God is the one that dictates what a person's service is unto him. And that is why in Ephesians chapter 4, what does it say that is God? It says that God gave, right, the fivefold leadership, right? So God gave apostles, prophets, teachers, evangelists, and pastors. And why did he give these gifts to the church? Why did he give these leaders to the church? It's for, the first thing it says is to equip the saints for the work of ministry. So the whole point that God is positioning you as a leader, right, is to equip his people to be able to serve him, not to serve you. Yes, it might turn out that God calls that person to serve alongside you in ministry. That could be a possibility. But the heart of why you are called to do what you're called to do, right, is to equip his people to serve him. Oh, sorry, there's a B. Is to equip his people to serve him. So I don't know what this mindset is that I see in the church and that I keep experiencing or seeing with these leaders, where they just have this expectation. You're literally just think people have to just do what you think that they're supposed to be doing. It's just, I really can't. I just don't understand it. It's such a selfish, it's such a demonic mindset. it's such a demonic mindset, and it's really against the heart of God. And so the other thing I want to say is this. The other thing that Jesus spoke on, right, is that Jesus said it's more blessed to give than to receive, right? And that applies, that's not just a general principle, that needs to be applied to in more ways than one in our life. And in the context of a leader, it could apply in this way, that even when we're pouring into people and we're investing in them in terms of we're praying for them or doing, teaching them or doing different things, you're not supposed to be doing it with this thing in your heart and mind that, okay, if I just pour into this person, if I just train them and teach them and do all these things, then I'm preparing them so that they can come and they can do this for me. You're not, that means that you're serving, you're supposed to be a servant of the Lord. You're supposed to be serving God's people, and you're doing it not because you just love God and you love God's people and you want to see them, be all that God has called them to be, or just, walk in the fullness of their relationship with Jesus. You're doing it because you're working in your mind, how can I get this person ready to get in position to help me grow in my ministry and to serve me and do this for me? That's evil. That's not the heart that God calls his leaders to have. And so it's a problem. So that's my question, is when will leaders stop acting like God's people belong to them? God's people do not belong to you. You're not the one that gets to dictate who does what and when. Like, your job is to obey God, right? Lead how God is saying to lead these people, right? Teach them whatever God is telling you to teach them and all of that stuff. But when God speaks, or when God is not, maybe you have to, how can I say this? You just have to have you can't do this and have all this expectation and things in your heart and mind that, this person is going to come do this for me, or they're going to do this, or we just can't be planning out people's lives and stuff. No, we gotta want what God wants for this person. And for some people, that might mean that, yes, they may come and serve and be a part of your ministry, or but that might not always be the case. And the important thing is just submitting to God, and that when God speaks, hey, set this person apart from me, or God says, hey, I want you to, have this person, help you with the greeting, or, I don't know, I'm just making up stuff right now as examples. Your job is just to obey that. You don't get to decide, oh, is this person ready? Are they qualified to do that? Are they, yes, you're going to use your discernment, because there are some clear standards that God has laid out about what the character of people who serve should be. And you're not just going to appoint anybody to do anything, it's not about being careless. But the problem that I feel like I have seen consistently is leaders getting so heartbroken and hurt and feeling so betrayed, but it's all really just because they had an expectation in their mind, and they had a particular view of a person in their mind of what they thought that person could do or be, and so when that person doesn't fall, it starts to go out of the realms of what that master plan is that the person has worked out for this person's life. Then they get so offended. It's just, stop it. God's people belong to God. You're just a shepherd. You're just his servant that he's entrusted you to guide and lead, but you're not the boss. You're not the one that's dictating and controlling their life and then decide what they do and when they do it. God is the one that has to lead and dictate that, and our job is just to be sensitive and to yield to that. I was just studying with someone, Acts chapter 6, and so that's when they appoint the 7 to serve the apostles. That's with Stephen and all of that they appoint these people to help do that daily distribution, because there were widows that were being neglected. And one of the things we were discussing and that God was really highlighting was the fact that you really see how it says, like, the apostles, right? They're the apostles are the apostles. There is an authority that God gave the apostles, right, to lead the church, right? But yet when it came to appointing the 7, they didn't like hold on so tightly to this control where they were like, how do you call it? They were not like, okay, we're going to be the ones to like pick these 7 leaders. And they weren't just trying to control and do everything. No, but what it says in Acts chapter 6 is that they gathered the full number of disciples. So they gathered the whole church together and they said, listen, they laid out what the criteria was. They said, look, the persons, we need some people that are fit these criteria that can help do this daily distribution. And they said the person has to be of good repute. So in other words, they have to have good character, good reputation. They have to have moral integrity. They have to have that godly character. And they have to be full of the Holy Spirit, and they have to be full of wisdom as well. So the apostles, what they did is they laid out what the criteria was. Like, this is the standard here, of what this person, these people need to be like. But they entrusted the other disciples, to be able to discern and to bring forth the candidates amongst the church that met that description. So they allowed essentially the church to choose who those first deacons or people that 7 to serve were going to be. Now the apostles still, it was like they were still, having that final check or whatever, because it says they took those 7 and they brought them before the apostles, and then they all, they laid the hands and they prayed for them. But what I appreciate about that story and how it displays the dynamics between leaders and, the rest of the disciples, was that there wasn't such a hold on tight rein to control where they just were taking their position as like just wanting to lord it over people and be bossy, and I need to choose what these people are allowed to do and stuff. No, they stood in their authority. They laid the criteria, like, this is what these people need to be like. They allowed the church to bring forth who those 7 were, or those people were that they thought met that criteria, and they brought them before the apostles. And obviously if the apostles would have disagreed for whatever reason, then those people wouldn't have been able to be prayed for and installed in that way. But you just see it in their leadership. Like, they were not taking this position of like they're just trying to control everything and do everything, and like there was that honor that they had for one another, where they entrusted that the church would be able to determine who's really the right fit for according to this criteria that we're giving them. I can't remember why I was bringing that up. I can't remember what triggered that thought, but anyway, I'm really just praying for a shift in some of the hearts and mindsets where we can stop having leaders in the church where they just think that everybody's there to just be their slave. Like, and it's like, no, we gotta love people. You have to love God, and you have to love people and want to pour into them, because you want to, you want just whatever God's will is for them. And if God's will is for them to serve alongside you for a time, then sure. But if it's to have them go on and do something else, or serve in some capacity maybe that was not what you were originally thinking, we need to be able to let go of that and just allow God to position people in the church how he wants them to be positioned, because that is what allows the church to be effective in ministry. That's what it says even in Acts chapter 6, if you read it, at the, I think it was verse 7? I think it says that, this is like right after they had appointed these 7 and like kind of installed them. It says that the church continued to increase and like just multiply greatly. So what allowed for the ministry and the to become even more effective is that, they were allowing people to do and be in position in the way that God wanted these people to be in position. And because everybody was standing in the right position and there weren't all this bickering about, well, I don't think they should be allowed to do that, and no, I don't think they're ready for that, they still have this issue and that issue. Like, there wasn't none of that. It was just about, we need to reach people with the gospel. We need to advance the kingdom of heaven here. And so it's like, if God wants this person to be positioned like this, let them be positioned like that. And it just, and obviously, as I said, it allowed the church to grow and be more effective and reach more, because everybody was standing and doing what they're supposed to do. And that will not happen if we have leaders in the church who just want to hold on so tight to people, or keep people in this place and just control everything of what a person is allowed to do or not do, and when they think that they're ready or they're allowed to do certain things, or if they don't fit, and if it fits into what their plan is that they have planned out in their mind for this person's life. It's just, come on, let's just stop that already. It's ridiculous, and it's hindering the move of God and the work of God and on the earth, just the advancing of the gospel, because there's too much of this nonsense happening. Anyway, I don't know what else to say. I pray that this blessed you. And until next time, remember, women of God, you were raised for a purpose. You were clothed in power, and you are built in prayer. Peace.